Alright guys, Paxet Bonum. So today we have a new topic. Our topic today is about Java methods. Our learning competencies are to describe the use of methods. We will also utilize methods to solve machine problems and develop your critical thinking by analyzing the interrelationship of codes to produce an overall outcome in a complex system. So as a motivation, I want you to look at this. Let's say, oh wait a minute. Let's say you have a robot that wants to know how to create a bracelet, just like what you have. The question is, how will you feed the robot instructions? Now note that computers read instructions one time or one instruction at a time only. So when you feed an instruction, I want you to I want you to think about providing instructions step by step on how he will be able or it will be able to do it. And as a hint, you have to use the colors. So you see here the ring, or sorry, the bracelet. If you're going to give the computer or the robot instructions, you definitely have to start somewhere. So maybe what you might think of is, of course, you have to get a ring and then you insert one yellow followed by another yellow, and then it will proceed to inserting color red, and then inserting a green, and then another green, and then a red, green again, and another green. So as you can see, the instruction is quite simple and it's very logically placed. But what if you only have 5 spaces to write on instructions, like so? How will we be able to feed instructions in a limited space? Because if you are going to think deeper, if there are only 5 sets of spaces, you can only give instructions up until here. So what will happen on the next set? They don't have any space. So one of the things that we can do is we try to compartmentalize the different instructions, or we try to compartmentalize the set of instructions. We find patterns that are repeatable. So looking at the bracelet, we can see that there are actually patterns. You can see that there are 2 yellows here. You have red, green, green, and another red, green, and green. So we can use them as our base for the instructions. So let me show you additional tables wherein we can place some instructions. So on the first table, I have set 1 here. I will write here yellow and another yellow. On set number 2, I will I will write here the second pattern, which is red, green, green. Now, since in the original table, we only have limited spaces, I will just call on the name of the tables. So on the first one, I will call set 1. Sorry, not set 1, but rather it should be set 2. Oh wait, yeah, it should be set 1. Well, anyway, you can start anywhere. So let's just say I will start with set 1. I'm sorry about that. Followed by set 2 and another set 2. So doing it this way, we actually have saved 2 spaces for instructions. If we call on set 1, it will call on yellow and yellow. So this one and this one. And then set 2, on the second step, set 2, red, green, green. And then on the third one, it again called on set 2, another red, green, green. So what just happened is how methods in Java basically operate. We gather and group different sets of instructions, and these instructions can be called using their names. So what are Java methods? By the way, this type of modular characteristic is a great way in this is a great method to use when organizing our codes. So going back, what are methods? So let me just clarify some terms, because methods or functions, a bit it's a big term. Functions may pertain to 3 different kinds of things in programming. We have subroutines. This is actually the more original term, but this is somehow obsolete because this is used by older programming languages like COBOL and Fortran. But the idea is the same. They can group together codes and they can be called anytime, and they perform different sets of commands. Another term that we have is what you may have learned already during your grade 8 JavaScript, the term function. So this is a type of subroutine that returns a value, and it is used by functional programming languages like JavaScript or C++ or C Sharp. And the other one is methods. So it's also a subroutine that returns a value in an object-oriented languages. Basically, functions and methods are the same. It's just that functions are used by functional programming languages and methods are used by object-oriented languages. So if you are not going to take up STEM or even computer science or IT in the future, you don't have to bother with this. I only mention this for those students who wish to pursue ICT in the future, because these 3 terms are very, very different from one another, architecture wise. So using the term function is not really applicable for these 3. they actually have specific terms like, subroutines, functions, methods. They all of them, they can group the commands that we use, but they are actually different. So what are methods or functions? Like I've said, methods, it is the term we use when we use an object-oriented language like Java. But what's peculiar about it is, since this is an introductory course in programming, we are not really using Java as an object-oriented language. We are using it more like a functional programming language. So if we interchange methods with the term functions, it will be okay as for the moment. Because like I've said, we are using Java like a functional programming language. So functions are blocks of organized and reusable code used to perform a single and related action. Now, functions are called or performed by writing, invoking, or calling its name. Just like what happened earlier, the bracelet thing, we've broken down the different commands, and we placed the commands, the colors, we placed it on two different tables, and the tables were named set1 and set2. So on the main table, we called on set1, that is the invoking of the name. When that name set1 was called, it performed two commands, which is inserting yellow twice. And then when set2 was called, the commands inserting red, inserting green, and inserting another green was called or was performed. Now, there are actually two types of functions. The first one is built-in functions, and I hope that you somehow remember this from your grade 8 lessons in JavaScript. So built-in functions are functions that are already built or pre-built inside, this is not JS, but rather Java. It's pre-built inside Java. And some examples are system.out.print, .next int, .next line, .next double, if, for, while. Basing on these examples, what do you think is common among them? Literally. Actually, all of them have parentheses. To identify a function, a keyword must have parentheses. If they don't have any parentheses, the compiler will think that the word is actually a variable. And if it will think it's a variable, it will look for a declaration. And since most probably there are no declarations for the word, like in this example, if there are no parentheses, it will think print is a variable. So it will look for any declaration, either integer, string, or any other object. It will look for a declaration of it. And like I've said, most probably there are no declarations of it. It will result in an error. So when we create and use functions, we definitely need to add that parenthesis. The one we will be focusing is the second one, the user-defined functions. These are functions that are custom-made by the programmer. So to create a function in Java, we use this syntax. So we will be using keywords public, static, and void, followed by a function name that you as the programmer will provide. And then we have the parentheses, and then we have arguments inside. It is followed by the blocks, wherein any code inside the blocks will be performed when the function name is called. Now, before we proceed, I have to mention this. Since I am providing the syntax, the arguments are always, or the argument will always be tackled. But since this, again, this is an introductory course, I have decided to not include arguments in this lesson, because if we add arguments, the lesson might get complicated very fast. Although what we are going to do is the most basic function of a function, which is to organize and segregate your codes. So let me give you an example. Oh, by the way, a note: functions are written outside of void main. It's always outside of void main, but should still be inside the class. So here is an example of a function. We have public, static, void. Those are mandatory, followed by a name I've provided, which is sample. And what this function does is it displays the string hello world. So every time that this keyword, or not keyword, rather, anytime the function name sample will be called, it will display on the screen hello world. So let's try doing that, and let's see the output. So we will write the function outside of void main. So we will write it above void main to for easier keep tracking of our functions. Public static void sample. So as you can see, it looks very much like void main, because actually the void main is just another function. And then inside we will write system.out.print hello. Oh, let's just cut this one and paste here. Okay, so let me run this one. Oh, okay. Now let's see the output. Now, as you can see, there's no output here, but clearly there is an output statement written inside the function. The question now is, where is the output? Why is there no output? And the quickest answer to that is, if you can remember what I've said earlier, functions are always performed by invoking or calling its name. What we did right here is we defined what the function can do. It can print hello world on our console, but we never called its name. So here inside our void main, I will now call on the name of the function, which is sample, and then terminate it. So if I call that, or if I call that name, it will perform the output statement. Now, like I've said earlier, again, a function is reusable, meaning as long as you call on its name, it will perform the contents of its block repeatedly. So I've called the name sample 3 times. You must expect that hello world will also be performed 3 times. So if I add something to this, here's the output 3 times. Let's add have a great day. So if it is called again 3 times, you will expect these 2 output statements to be deployed 3 times. Now, for your activity, I want you to write a function and name it print with a capital P. Inside the function, you ask the user for a name. Now, since you are going to ask the user for a name, definitely you need to import the scanner functionality, declare a scanner inside the function, and then get the input using the function. Once you got the name, you display the string hello followed by the input name. Just a note, inside void main, it will not have any other codes aside from the calling of the name, which is print. And as a level up task, you create an additional function. You give it a name on your own, but be reminded that it should be relevant to its task. And its task is to display goodbye followed by the name. So this level up task will immediately follow the function print. Okay, so please do your activity now.